Hi, my name is Nikki Bishop, and I'm a Doctor of Education student in Assessment Learning and Student Success with a focus in higher education at Middle Tennessee State University. This semester, I was in a class, Legal Issues in Higher Education, and we were tasked with picking a topic from this book, The Law of Higher Education, and analyzing that topic and just kind of going over our reflections and how we can maybe help improve on the topic or just provide some more additional information on it. So my chosen topic was ableism in higher education. Um, this is a very heavy topic to deal with. It was heavy to research. I first started learning about it in grad school, and so I kind of wanted to expand my knowledge on it. And it didn't get much easier. It still was very hard and heavy to hear, mainly because I do fall under a category that I'm going to discuss later of forms of ableism. So we all know that many students deal with discrimination, sexual harassment, discriminated about their religion, national origin. But something that really hits hard is when students are discriminated against based off their disabilities. And that's what ableism is. It refers to the discrimination in favor of able bodied people. Able bodied people are people like me and you. Preferably me. I'm not going to assume that everyone that's listening to this presentation is able-bodied, but I know for me personally, I am an able-bodied person. I can see, I can hear, I can walk up the stairs, I can access literally anywhere. I am able-bodied, and ableism can also refer to the idea that people with disabilities cannot function as members of society, and that is so far from the truth. And I think that most people think that is because ableism is rooted in the lack of understanding and the idea that people with disabilities need to be fixed. When in fact they're normal people like me and you. They're normal. And they want to live normal lives, but due to the normalization of ableism and ableist views, that's rarely possible for them to do that. So, I'm going to go really quickly through some of the forms of ableism. I want to discuss just maybe two or three of them in depth. So, the first form is failing to provide accessibility beyond just wheelchair ramps. Most people, when they think of ableism and providing accessible places, they will just slap a wheelchair ramp on something and think, okay, that's what we need to do. But that's far from the truth. And here in today's world, we need to also not only be looking at the physical environment, but also the online environment. In a court case, the United States versus Regents of the University of California, that topic came into play where there were students who complained that they couldn't access the conferences and sporting events and their own courses through the online platform that the UC Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, provides. So they do provide all these events on an online platform, but the students could not access them, mainly because they may have been blind students or deaf students, and they use screen readers, and they couldn't access the screen, and they had barriers trying to access these websites. So that's one form of, and one example of universities not being accessible. Another form I want to jump into, which is kind of similar but a little bit off, is the assuming that a disability is always visible, which is not the case always. And of course, I'm not taking away from physical disabilities because those are important and we do need to discuss those. But here, recently, invisible disabilities are things that do not need to be taken lightly at all. And people often devalue these disabilities because they cannot see them. But Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And I know we hear that a lot. Individuals who experience learning disabilities, developmental intellectual disabilities, or even chronic illnesses may identify as disabled. And you can't see their disability, but it's there. Um, in the court case of Brown University, it resulted in a settlement agreement, but the agreement ensured that the students who are facing mental health disabilities and they take medical leave will still have equal access to their educational programs. And I think that's very important that Brown University stepped up, even if they were forced, but they stepped up and to revise their undergraduate leave policies and practices. In another court case, Coddington versus Adelphi University, a student claimed that the university failed to accommodate his learning disabilities. That's another court case thrown onto these universities, and you see those everywhere of these students not being accommodated. And that's due to the lack of education on these disabilities. The next form I want to go into is able-bodied people not checking their privilege. That's something that hits really close to home for me as a daughter of a woman who is in a wheelchair. And when I see able-bodied people parking in the handicap parking spaces or using the handicap restroom, that is able-bodied people not checking their privilege. And we may not think that's a big deal, but when we use resources that are allocated for people with disabilities, that is discriminating against them. And that's as far as I'm going to go on that topic, just so I don't get out of hand or anything. But another form of ableism, and I'm not going to go too in depth in it because I feel like it's very self-explanatory, is just using ableist language. Even in a society, me as a higher education professional, I need to make sure that I'm not using words like crazy or insane, because that can hurt my students. And using words like crippled and psycho. Those are two terms that are found pretty much everywhere, and we need to make sure we are being okay and careful when we're talking to our students. Rachel Cohen shared her experiences in an article she wrote for a magazine, The Body is Not an Apology. And one thing I reread over and over again was this quote right here: when a critique of language that refers to a disability is not welcome, it is nearly inevitable that a disabled person, I am not welcome either. Let me read that again. When a critique of language that refers to a disability is not welcomed, it is nearly inevitable that a disabled person thinks, I am not welcome either. And I hate when people think they're not welcome. So that's why I'm very passionate about this, because I am a people person. I want everyone to feel loved and to feel welcomed and to feel safe in their environment. And when we have these ableist views and when we welcome ableism into higher education, that can pose a lot of consequences. And I know I'm going over my time a little bit, but to kind of close this out, I know ableism is often tolerated as good intentions, and ableism is telling someone that they handle their mobility device very well. It's being told, stop being so angry all the time. It's being told that, wow, you have strong arms, or ableism is ignorance. It's not okay. It's the norm. It's not subjective, and it needs to be eliminated. And unlearning ableism means unlearning what we see in media. It's unlearning queerphobia, transphobia, classism, because all of these topics are connected with ableism, and we need to find a way to eliminate those in society and higher education in order to make our students feel safe, welcomed, and do away with this hostile environment that we're putting them in. The ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, came into play over 30 years ago. So more progress definitely needs to be made. And we, as this new generation, I feel like can definitely make that change. also to help avoid court cases. But thank you for listening to me. I'm very passionate about this topic. I wish I had a little bit more time to kind of go in depth to my paper. Um, but thank you. I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you for listening to me.